So actually, it was this time last year where actually I was speaking to Klaus here at Layer 123 in The Hague, and what was exciting and why we joined immediately, one of the early members of Etsy ZSM, was because his stated commitment to learning from existing technologies that were out there, that this was not going to be just another navel-gazing standards body effort, right? And that we weren't going to just talk over glasses of wine about conceptual architecture. We wanted to actually see if we can help move and transform the industry, and that's been a really important part of the work inside Etsy ZSM. It's a motivating part for us, and it led us to start, propose, and lead now the first Etsy ZSM POC. So really quickly, do I have a clicker? Yeah, I do. Okay, great. So just quickly, if you don't know EnterpriseWeb, EnterpriseWeb ran the first Etsy NFV POC, Cloud NFV. Back in 2013, we were already showing model-based, event-driven, policy-controlled NFV. We went on to win 6 consecutive awards in the TMF. We won the award here last year, and Leading Lights Award this year for Best NFV Product Strategy. So just real quickly, supporting a wide range of use cases. So ZSM was something we were already familiar with, zero-touch network and service management. So we then launched as of just this June, 4 or 5 months into the life of Etsy ZSM, the first POC, and we got a fantastic team here, as you can see here, supported by Deutsche Telekom and Sprint, with some great contributions from AWS, Amdocs, Fortinet, XFL, Metaswitch, and InfoSim, and you'll see how they're all involved in this zero-touch network management solution. So real quickly, actually, I think really you got some of this from Klaus already, but I think to be very specific, Etsy NFV, of course, provides the foundational architecture with Mano for NFV, but if you look at the Mano architecture and the Mano documentation up to this date, it specifically excludes the application layer. Right? They wanted to focus on the virtualization aspects, but the problem is all the operational efficiencies come at the application layer. Right? And that's why the early implementations of NFV really struggled because there was no standards basis for that higher level. So Etsy ZSM is now tackling that, right? And so we look at Etsy ZSM as being the foundation for a new OSS. Lightweight, event-driven, distributed, and automating, abstracting the SDN layer complexity up to what is in the Etsy ZSM architecture called the digital storefront, which would include customer management, BSS, portals, AI, ML, other things northbound. So, and to us, Zero Network, again, I'm not the chair, so I'm representing EnterpriseWeb's view of these things, so these are not the canonical definitions, so excuse me. But zero-touch network and service management is about leveraging automation to eliminate human touch points, right? Zero touch. If you're doing a lot of custom coding, manual integration, if you're writing scripts and events, you are not zero touch, right? If something happens in your network and you have to then have people intervene, that's manual intervention, then you are not zero touch. So the principle here is to get as close as possible to a highly automated environment, to sort of replicate the extreme automation that the cloud natives already have. So in our first, this POC is already on to its second demo. The first demo was about autonomic closed loop, and we were showing just the foundational enabling capability of how to automate end-to-end SLA management in a multi-vendor, multi-domain, multi-VIM scenario. And it was secure VoLTE. Essentially, we're creating like a VPN line over multiple clouds, across multiple clouds. And the specific story is that you're going to have a day 2 scenario where a service is running and it's healthy, but there's a denial of service attack, and some nodes are taken down, and those nodes have to be rebuilt, and that's all done dynamically. And in this case, Amazon Web Services provided the NFVI. They gave us 3 zones that acted as isolated domains. We have Amdocs providing what in the architecture is called digital storefront, the customer management. We were providing the ZSM framework-based solution. It's a long phrase, but there's a ZSM framework. It's emerging. Clearly, we're referencing what's existing, what the group has already is consolidating around, the ideas and principles, and then we represent a reference implementation of that. XFL monitoring, Fortinet security, InfoSim resource monitoring, Metaswitch IMS. We also included Radis to CPC, open source Radis to CPC, which interestingly runs on Docker, not on OpenStack, where Metaswitch runs on OpenStack. So now you're multi-Vim, multi-vendor, multi-Vim, multi-VNFM, multi-domain, right? Some nice representative complexity. So this is what it looks like. This is a use case diagram, the kind of diagrams that you see 1,000 times a day, and maybe more while you're here. Is you see the 3 domains, and you see the distribution of the various applications and services, including the Expo probes, et cetera, the monitoring that's going across that, and you see the voice traffic flowing through. And EnterpriseWeb is enabling the this demonstration, of course, was a day 2 demonstration. As I said, it was the services running healthy. But clearly, we had to set this up. So we actually deployed this from scratch to deployment, fully running on Amazon. So 3 clean slate Amazon zones, working with the global head of telecom for Amazon, Shoma Chakravarti. And we did it in a day and a half. Right? Everybody onboarded, all software deployed, everything modeled, all done in metadata, no hard code. Right? No manual integration. And so that then gives us a good segue to, so this is a little more detailed walkthrough. This deck will be shared ultimately by layer 1, 2, 3, so I put it in there, but you can, I'm not going to read through that. There's also a link that we already published to that video. So if you go to the Etsy ZSM website, there's a wiki page for this POC, and all of our documents have been published. So everything I'm sharing is public. That link is public. There's a nice extended video there with even some Q&A that you'll hear in the background. But now going on to our second demo, which I'm actually presenting at our booth if anybody's interested, and we won't have time to go through it here, is that we're taking 100% reuse of what we created in demo number 1. We're now showing how we can interact with external systems. And in this case, the scenario is upselling SLAs. So now we're extending the POC demo to include Amdocs as that customer management system, where Amdocs is setting the SLA setting the service levels for the customers. And in this case, it's going to be a secure video streaming. And again, day 2, customers running video, and they're running within parameters, within boundaries for their SLA. But they try to run an HD video. Their current SLA doesn't support it. Instead of just reporting alerts or billing events up to customer management, we're actually giving them an interactive relationship with the customer management so that we can just provide continuous reporting to them to the extent they want it, or they can check in. So some internal logic inside Amdocs is saying, hey, this customer is within the SLA, but they want HD video. Why don't I offer them an upgrade in the SLA so that they can actually get that HD video and not disrupt their quality of service? They pass back down the change of the order, right? Because we're now going to upgrade that service for the new SLA. The notification of that upgrade of the SLA is an event in EnterpriseWeb. EnterpriseWeb then responds to that, reevaluates the entire service, looks down on the network, see what's everything's running, then passes the commands to scale to meet the new SLA. Again, the same team, and again. Now, so you can see the addition of Amdocs over there and how they fit in there, and you can see they're, as in the ZSM architecture, they're a digital storefront, but you can see we're having interaction across these domains seamlessly, zero touch, right? It was zero touch, and we added Amdocs. And again, mostly the work was just a few calls between architects and engineers, really. That was all, what was going to be the scope of the contract between the parties, right? What was that relationship going to look like? That was really what we were discussing. And it wasn't just between EnterpriseWeb. What would be interesting from a ZSM perspective that these two domains could be sharing? Because remember, we're going to be publishing everything that we do and contributing that back, at least as straw man interfaces, to say if you wanted to do things like this, you would need this kind of metadata and these kind of metrics, right? So in this case, let's see, the QoS metric was bit rate, which was the trigger. So just giving you all down to the detail again. I'm not going to read through this line by line because it would bore you to tears. But I wanted to show you, people are familiar looking at documents like this, and I know everyone talks about orchestration. But orchestration is really yet another abused term in the standards, in this environment, in telecom. It's so overloaded. Now we have dynamic orchestration and smart orchestration. Do you know what? People were saying that in 2005. That was a really bad idea in the enterprise. When they were overloading their ESBs, or the enterprise service buses, with application logic, that was breaking the separation of concerns. It is such a bad idea. The reason you're seeing it is because a lot of people are bolting on architectures after the thought. They're throwing products and they're creating middleware stacks for you, right? That are going to get in the way of your agility, right? They're going to get in the way of your distribution. They're going to get in the way of your change management. So you really need to be worried about it. When you're talking about coordinating the service level, remember, if we're talking about zero-touch network and service management, the end state is the full automation of the lifecycle of that service. Well, that means I have to treat that service as a logical object to which I can issue commands, and those commands will be then translated to the specific operations required for each participating element. That's non-trivial, right? So what it really looks like is like that, and that ain't orchestration, right? That's a non-linear, highly interactive, I/O and compute-intensive relationship happening in millisecond speed to understand the environment, understand all of the application state, and then make the best optimized decisions, right? And so, I just want to point that out. So orchestration in computer science, orchestration just means a linear set of operations. Orchestration should be, it's a tool. It's what you use when you want to execute something that you already know. That's what orchestration, if you're separating concerns properly, that's what it does. Automation is essentially the configuration of the individual functions underneath that. So it should be automation, configuration, choreography. That's the appropriate level of stack. And again, I'm speaking for myself here. This is my sponsored slot here. So I'm not speaking and representing these ideas, but I do promote these ideas in ZSM. And I think these are actually just good principles. So these are hopefully insights that I'm sharing. We have a demo. I said I'm going to do it in the booth. So we essentially align with all the published principles. So there's a list of principles and it's been evolving, so this slide hasn't updated since the last time, but there's an evolving set of principles that ZSM has, and we map to all of those principles already. There's also a set of requirements, and now I can't even remember the number of requirements but it's a growing list of requirements, all mapped to scenarios, and we mapped ourselves against those. The first demo took us to 50%. We're now at like 90% of meeting all the requirements across all the scenarios already. So we look at the role of the POC is to inform, contribute, and then conform, right? And let it like leapfrog, right? We're not the standard. We're not even saying the standard. Everything has to be implementation independent, obviously. So the thing is, but we can share insights, as do many of the participants, as do all of the members of ETSI ZSM ISG. So we inform, we share, we listen, and we take the inputs. And as the architecture evolves, we will then reflect that in our implementation. So we've already made a whole set of contributions, including a strawman architecture, a model for intent-based network service, a model for domain orchestrator interfaces. This is interesting, because anybody who's familiar with ETSI or, right? Or anybody who's familiar with MEF LSO, well, there's sort of a gap in the controls there between those two, right? ETSI or is pretty thin, and MEF LSO is targeting another layer. If I'm doing zero-touch automation, I need the metadata and metrics and telemetry to control those functions. Right? I need to know this. I need to know what's happening down on the network, and I need to know what's happening on those applications. If I don't have that information, how can I possibly optimize my solution? Now, that doesn't mean you will have complete transparency, but I think there's a growing number of people inside the ETSI ZSM group, having many conversations here, that agree that your optimization is only as good as the information you get, right? And if you can't get good information from the VIMs and the VNFMs about what's going on, well then that will be the rate limiter for your optimizations. So that doesn't mean this won't be a federated solution. It doesn't mean that there won't be handoffs to potentially multiple controllers or orchestrators. It just means you need good interfaces for sharing information between these domains of concern and control. So again, these are all published. It's all out there. And we created a model for abstracting standard LCM operations. So this is our model for, I got 5 minutes still, so good. This is our definition of intent. Again, it's not the ZSM, it's not gospel, but it's useful to have a definition. And there's 2 ways you can think of intent. A lot of people are talking about, and I see somebody already shaking their head that that's not intent. And that's okay. When I publish something up here, I'm actually inviting a dialogue, so I'd be happy to talk to you if you want to add a discussion. But let me express my logic as to why we're setting this up. You could actually say intent is a natural language thing, and I just want my customer to say, give me some stuff and let it run. I guess that might be nice. We can have magic wands too, and that would be really awesome. We're talking about mission-critical operations, regulated SLAs and performance, right, of your networks. And we're talking about transactions, right? Ultimately, this stuff needs to work, right? When I call that service, I'm going to trigger a series of interactions over your environments. I need to deploy, configure, assure. I need to treat that series of interactions as a single transaction, because if it fails, it all has to fail, right? Because otherwise, you're going to have things that are partially deployed, partially running. You're not going to have a knowledge of state. Your systems will unwind out of control. So there's 2 levels of intent, I would argue. And so I'm talking about and this is, again, this is my opinion, so you can hate it, it's okay. But from my view at the ZSM level, and ZSM is sort of an enabling level, right, is that you just need to enable the intent to happen. And by enabling intent, what we're saying is, well, gosh, what does it mean to enable intent? It means that intent, I'm pretty close with my wife. We've been married for 20 years, and I don't always know her intent. I mean, intent's is an ambiguous thing, right? But I take some sort of intent, maybe it's some AI, it's some ML, some natural language, right? But I got to translate that into something real, right? But what does that mean? The ability to translate that intent means I actually have to have a very abstract service definition, which is just a set of service level logic and SLAs over references, either absolute references, policy-based references, or algorithmic references to a set of VNFs and to a set of environments, right? And that the service levels, this live metadata, network state, and telemetry will guide the resolution of all those policies and decisions, so that I can take something that's very abstract and loosely coupled and then bind it into the network to reflect that intent. Because it's hard to argue that you're doing an intent-based system if everything's coded in advance, right? And it's hard to say you're optimized if everything's coded in advance. In fact, you guys have been doing this for a long time. What would be new if you're coding everything in advance? So as far as we're concerned, is that there's 3 axes, right, of this. Is that the first principle is that you're talking about a loosely coupled abstract notion of a service. And then we say, and again, I'm summarizing at a high level, right? I'm not giving IP, I'm just summarizing at a high level. That you really have 3 axes of that. Some variability of a selection decision on VNFs, right? Selection decisions on domains. Is it going to Amazon? Is it going to Azure? Is it going to Google? Is it going to an internal environment? What Vim is it running? Is it on Docker or Kubernetes, whatever, right? And then the service level agreement. And I'm going to late bind that entire thing. This is the strawman information model. I only have a minute and a half, so I'm not going to be able to go into it in too much great detail, but you can see that we are sharing some concrete stuff. It's out there. So I welcome other people to join and actually make their cases. But we've had some great collaborations with Inmanta, HPE, Ericsson, and many of the other members working inside. Certainly, our friends at Viavi and all these other and the operators. We've gotten great support from Michael Klotz at Deutsche Telekom, as well as Serge Manning from Sprint. So that's informed all this, right? This is so there's been many people, many eyes on these things. But essentially, we're showing here an event-driven system, right? A lightweight event-driven system at a high enough level that could actually drive some agreement. That was our intention. It's not it's not any one implementation. If you want to do it with a Kafka bus, great. You want to do it with Camunda, great. We don't care, right? You could do it with any selection. You want to do it with OSM? We just joined OSM, so we'll be implementing all their open APIs. Use it with whatever set of technologies you want. It's implementation independent. Door-to-door, I already sort of described, and again, we've published this, so it's out there. One just last notion here is one important aspect is when we're talking about that abstract service as a logical object that is abstracting a set of interfaces over the participating elements, you really want to abstract the controls and the management, right? So in this POC we did that. So we used the Etsy standard LCM, and so I can tell the service stop, scale, whatever other standard operation it needs to do, and that will then translate into the various operations necessary to implement that over the network. So that is, that's it. So this deck will be published, and thank you very much for your time.